Welcome to Wire Guild. The tutorial that I'm going to show you today I've called the Hugs and Kisses cab ring. That's because you've got little round beads around the shank, which is a little bit like the circles that we do for hugs, and then you've got a cross wire on the top that makes your kisses, and of course it's a cabochon that we're using. So materials, I've got two lengths of approximately 12 inches or 30 centimetres of 0.8mm or 20 gauge round wire. And then I've got some 0.4mm or 26 gauge round wire, a 13 by 18mm cab. Now if you want to use a smaller one or a larger one, that's fine, you just need to allow for it in your wire. And I've used some 4mm beads. Now depends on how big your ring is as to how many beads you're going to use or how much fine wire you're going to use for your weaving. So first things first, let's size up the ring. So I popped a ring onto my mandrel, and using a little felt tip pen I'm just going to mark above and below the ring, which will give me two nice little guidelines to work within. Now this is a piece of paper from an old post-it note, and just sticking it on over the top and wrapping it all the way around. Pop the long end underneath, and then if I get my felt tip pen again and get the lid off, there we go, I can just make a mark along there. And that gives me a really good guide to how long my weaving and my beads need to be to create the shank of the ring. So I'll just pop the lid, oh dear, hang on, need to get the pen lid the right way around. So we'll just pop this out of the way. We're going to use it later as like our size guide. I have two lengths of my 0.8mm or 20 gauge wire and my 4mm silver beads, which I'll just open up. I won't actually sort of put them out onto the table because they tend to roll about all over the place. If you have a bead mat or a cloth, that's great because it stops them rolling about. And my 0.4mm wire, as you can see, it's a bit tarnished, but it's probably because it's so damp here in Ireland. But don't worry about that, because as soon as we clean the ring at the end, it will bring all that tarnish straight off. So two pieces of wire. Now if I was just going to weave between those two pieces using my fine wire and weave together, it can be difficult and they can pull together. But if when we add our wire, whoops, or just throw it around across the table, whichever you prefer, I'll just roll myself some off. There we go. And I'm going to start by wrapping this just on one wire. There we go, just till it's nice and anchored firmly. So I've just wrapped around several times. It really, there is no exact number, it's just until it's nice and firm. Now I'm going to add one of the silver beads, so I do need to cut this wire so that it's not on the reel, because obviously if it's on the reel you can't pass it through the bead, can you? So let me just get my snips and we'll cut some of this off. There we go. And one of my 4mm beads. 4mm is quite a nice size for this. You could use smaller if you wished, 3mm or 2mm. Depending if you've got really tiny fingers, you'd be better off with smaller beads. But I've got quite large fingers, so 4mm are fine for me. I slide that all the way down so it's sitting next to the wire. Bring your second wire in, so it's at the side of it, and then wrap around the other piece of wire. And as you can see, the bead works a little bit like a spacer. Because the bead is in there, you can't pull the wires down too tight. Now I've wrapped around 5 times. I've taken a little close-up shot there so you can actually see better than you can on the video camera. And then I'm going to come across like a figure of 8 to the other side, so it's gone under that one, over that one, and I'm just going to wrap around 3 times around that wire there, and then back to the wire at the top, and I'm going to wrap around 5 times. I like the discrepancy in the numbers. I like sort of the sort of 5 at the top and then 3 at the bottom and 5 at the top again. I think it's quite interesting the way the wires lay, but it's one of those things that you can practice with and experiment, and you might find that there's different numbers that you like better. So I'm going to add another bead now. There we go. When I find the hole. I'm sure it's there somewhere. There. No, yep. I'm sure they get more awkward with these beads as I get older. It's nothing to do with my eyesight. So we wrap that around there, and then I'm going to wrap around 5 times. So, yeah, 5. See, now memory's going and I'm forgetting. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, number 5. And then we come back to the other side. Just pull that out. You probably noticed I'm working near the end of the wires. I'm not working in the centre, although eventually we will need this weaving and the beads and everything to be in the centre of the wire. But I find it easier not to have to work between 2 long lengths of wire. So it's actually easier to work near the end and then just slide the weaving up and down to where you want it to be. So I'm following the same pattern. I've gone around 5 times there, and I'm going to add another bead on. Just straighten that bit there. It's always nice while you're weaving just to keep correcting your wires. Even though you've got your beads in the middle and your beads are holding them parallel, just be careful that your ends aren't going to bend in, because you don't want a kinked wire. This is going to be the shank of your ring, and the smoother and the more even it is, the more comfortable it's going to be to wear. So we're going to pop this wire on through our bead. I think I need bigger holes in the beads. And slide it all the way down. Come back here. And then just pop it in place. And I'm going to wrap around 5 times. 1, 2, 3. Now, have you seen what I'm doing with my thumb? I push my thumb in and it sort of places the wire in the right place. Can you see how I just throw my thumb in like that? It's almost second nature. I don't even think about doing it now. But it just pushes the wire nice and tight so you don't get any loose, like loopy bits in your weaving. And there's no doubt about it, the neater your weaving is when it comes to your piece, the better the overall thing looks. So there we've got a close-up just to see what I'm doing. Now I've speeded this bit up because you must be getting bored. So let's have a look. I want to show you the difference in this ring shank. So I'll just pop it off my finger. This one's been done where I've just woven between 3 wires, and it is a much firmer shank, but I don't think it's quite as pretty as the one that we're making now. So let's just keep going. I've got my 3 beads. We're going to need sort of quite a bit more than this before we get to that length that we had. Oh, wrong beads. Whoops, sorry. Now, I'm sure I had a cloth kicking around. This would be a lot easier if I had these out. Hang on a minute, let's just have a look for the... Won't be a second. There we go. That's easier. I'll pop that on. Okay, now slide this one down. All the way down. And figure of 8. That's it, make sure they're straight. And wrap around 5 times. I'm sure you must be getting bored of me doing this by now. What I'll have to do is speed a bit more up so that you can see me doing it, just straightening. I'm going to be running out of wire on the bottom side soon, so I'm going to need to pull that through so that I've got a little bit more room to work, because you don't want to be right on the very edge, because that can pull the wires together too tight when you're on the very edge. and then of course it makes it difficult then to thread your next bead in. Let's just put another one on, make sure it's okay there. There we go. And wrap it around 5 times. Whoops, bit of fluff, get that out of the way. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, now I'm going to need to slide these down a bit, because looking at my piece of paper, I'm nowhere near. I'm going to need at least another couple of beads on there before I'm anywhere near the right length. If you find it won't pull through, what you can do is you can grip on the end with your pliers and twist it backwards and forwards while pulling, and then you'll usually find that the wire will come through. Sometimes it'll catch if you just try to pull it straight, but if you use the pliers and bend. Now I've whizzed this up because you know what you're doing. The bead's going on, we're doing 5 times, 3 on the other side, 5 on this side, stick another bead on. And I'm going to keep doing this now until we get to the point. Let's have a look. There. You don't want this exactly the same length as your paper. You want a little bit of space either side. It's only a small amount. Oh, probably if we're measuring it, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch either side, if that, maybe a bit less. So now I need these to be in the middle. So I'm going to get these out of the way before I knock them and have them on the floor. And we'll just put your thumb and finger over the top of the wires and slide it. If it won't, the pliers go on and I twist until the wires slide through the weaving and you end up with your weaving in the middle like that. Okay, so bring back your mandrel with our little marks on it, and I've put my beads underneath, and I'm going to bring the wires up to the top. Try and keep them on or within your little tram lines that you drew on. Now you can see there, those beads aren't going anywhere near the top. If you get too close to the top, you'll never get your stone on. So wires to the top and as tight as you can. Yours probably won't slip around in circles because you won't have a camera underneath your nose, but mine is doing. And I've just twisted all the way around with both wires. Come here. There we are. Alright, now I need to just straighten these wires up, and I want them to be in a nice gentle V shape, top and bottom. It might be easier if I just slip it off. So let's do the other side. There we go. We're going to weave in between these two V's, and this weaving is what's going to actually hold the stone in place. So let's just, I grab the stone. We want the V to be coming out sort of the same side, the same distance, if you know what I mean, sort of either side. I've still got my binding wire fastened on there, and I'm just going to get that. Don't cut it off because it's a nice firm anchor and we can just keep using it. These wires are not quite even. Can you see how this one's sort of further over that side and this one's sort of a bit too far around? So I'm just gonna, sorry it's gone a little bit out of shot, pull until I've centered them a little bit more. That's it, that one needs to go that way. It does take some fiddling with, but it is worth it. If you get them off to start off with, you'll end up with your stone ever so slightly crooked when it's on the top of the ring, and we don't want that. So keep fiddling with these wires until when you look down at it, it looks more like an X. I'll just kink that, so I straighten it with my pliers. So keep going until we get that X shape rather than two separate V's. You see, that's so much better because the wires seem to be coming out sort of diametrically opposite one another as opposed to sort of staggered. So I'm using the fine wire, and what I'm doing now is I'm starting to weave in between that V, and I'm going to go round twice and then under and over and round the other side, round twice. I'm sorry, I keep pulling my hands too close to me, don't I? Sorry about that. Round twice, up and over, round twice and back, round twice. These are great to weave as long as you start at the small point and work towards a larger area. That makes them nice and easy to do. If you're ever doing one where you start at the large point and work towards the narrow end, the wires slip terribly and it makes it very hard to do. So I've just got a little bit going there. So I'm going to swap over to the other side. So I will need another length of the 26 gauge or 0.4mm round wire, and I'm just going to set that going by just binding round 3 or 4 times round one of the wires just to give it a firm point. And then I'm going to weave back and forth, so round twice, then under and over, figure of 8 to the other side. And I've speeded this up because you must get bored of me just doing the same thing over and over and over again. But it's just round twice, figure of 8, round twice, and it's gradually just getting larger and larger. And then you can keep checking with your stone to see how you're going for size. I need to do a bit more, so I'm going to keep that weaving. And then we will check that size again. Let me have a look. That's getting better. Yeah, it's sort of just showing because those ends are going to come up and they will hold the stone in place. So I'm going to do the other side and let me check again. Yeah, we're getting there now. Needs to be just a little. Now start bending these wires up just on the edge. There we go. That one that way. That one that way. I'm holding the stone in place with my left hand, or my least dominant hand, and with my dominant hand on my right hand because I'm right-handed, I'm bending these wires up over, and it's creating a like a cup area, if you like, that's going to stop the stone from moving anyway. So I'm going to keep weaving with those wires bent up. So I'm doing exactly the same weave. I'm going around twice and then figure of 8 back to the other side, and I'm extending it sufficiently so that when we get our little cabochon on there, it will be enough to be underneath, and it's going to come up underneath the pointed end of the oval, and it's going to hold it down and onto the ring. You've probably heard me say before that there's no mistakes in making wire jewellery, there's only new designs. About one of the things that you could class as a mistake is having your stone drop out. It really is not good. So what you want to make sure is whatever you're going to do in a design is to make sure that the stone is nice and firm and secure. So when you think you've bound round enough, you can just check it with your stone in place and push the wires down. That's loads. In fact, I might have gone a little bit too far with that one, because with this being a piece of druzzy, it's slightly covering the little window. Now curl the wire down nice and gently. Don't force it. Use the end of the wire, because if you use the end of the wire you get this nice soft sinuous curve. You don't get like a little corners on it. My stone's going there, held in place with my left hand, and then I'm going to bring the wires up on the other side, and I'm going to continue to weave between those two wires. I'm just moving the others out of the way because I'm catching on them. It will also stop the stone wriggling from left to right for those curls. So figure of 8, 2 wraps round and back to the first wire and keep going. If you have a very flat stone or a very flat cabochon, or maybe you've decided to use something like abalone shell, which looks absolutely gorgeous in this design, that's very flat. So obviously you don't need to have anywhere near as much weaving, because you're going to be able to come up and round the stone much easier. If you've decided to use something like, I'm trying to think of a really fat one. Well, it could be anything, but I know that the Mexican fire opals are often quite fat. I'm just bending that over and seeing how far I am, and checking that, yeah, I've gone far enough now. So I'm now bending the side wires so they match, and it stops the stone moving at the side. I was just about to say that the really fat stones obviously you need to do more weaving with, because obviously it's going to be deeper. Now then, let's just straighten that up slightly. You will find you'll do a lot of wriggling with these, but that's alright. I think that's gone a little bit too far as that weaving, but I did say I thought I'd gone too much. So I'm just going to undo one of the wraps and go backwards. Also, I've ended up with my fine wire both on the same side, and I could do with one on one side and one on the other for the next step. So I've just wound one of them back, so one on one side, one on the other, and wriggle that stone again. Now we're working on the side wires now, so I've got these nice lovely curls where it comes around, but obviously we need some way of joining those together. I'm just going to move that. This is a wire from underneath. I'm not going to cut it off yet, but I'm just pulling it out of the way so that I don't tangle it up with what I'm doing. Now I'm going to just wrap around the wire that I'm working on until I've got the end of the wire where I need it to be, which obviously is going to be just opposite the other one. So I'm going to wrap around and around until I get it in the right place. When my mother taught me embroidery, she always said that the back of a piece ought to be just as beautiful as the front of the piece. Therefore, to get a wire to where you want it without having like a baggy length, it's easy to wrap it round. So I've gone across to the other wire and I'm doing a figure of 8, around twice and then back. What that will do is that joins these two curved wires together, making sure that the stone can't slip out the side, and gives it a little bit more structural strength. So still round twice, figure of 8 to the other side, round twice. You don't need loads of these. It's to hold those two wires together and produce a little sort of strengthener at the side. I'm going to do exactly the same thing now with the other side, and I'm just whizzing through that because you've seen me do it once. There we go, under and over. Right, so both of my sides are now connected. So more wriggling. Now then, move my fine wire out of the way, and there's that little edge bit. Now I'm going to take the two thicker wires, these, and I'm going to pop it through the middle of the ring. There we go. And the same with the other side, moving the fine wires out of the way because I don't want to tangle them. Now using a pair of pliers so that I can get a bit more grip than just with my fingers. Get hold of the end and pull, and same with that one, pull, and then I'm going to wrap this over the edge of the shank, and this is going to give us a nice firm, I can't get that one to, yeah, I've just done that one in the wrong place. I'm just going to move it. I put it on the inside of the other wire and it should have been the outside wire because it won't lay down. There we go. And then I can press that down with my pliers and that makes it nice and firm, so that's locked into place. There we go. And I'm going to do the same now on the other side. So let's move this silly fine wire out of the way for a minute. Curve your thicker wires, pass it through the middle of the ring. use your pliers to pull that up and curve that one and pass it through. So they're crisscrossing underneath, and then you're bringing them back to the top nice and tight. And then as you press down onto the shank, it adds more strength and support to the ring. So press that. Can you see now why we couldn't have taken those beads much further? If you'd have had beads any further, there would have been no room to press these down. Right, so we've got the weaving on, which is holding our stone in place. I'm squidging it to make sure that it's absolutely secure. And I'm going to start and get rid of these little tail wires now. So just cut that off, use your pliers and smooth it down so that it's pressed in, because you don't want any little sharp bits. And the same on the other side. Cut that off as short as I can manage. Please don't cut through the wrong wires. If you cut through the wrong wires, you've had it, you start again. Now then, so we've still got these wires, and I'm bringing it up to the top of the piece and down at the side. We are reflecting the curve that we've already done that had the binding on, but this time I'm going over the top of the weaving. There we go. Now I want these two wires to cross, so come here, you want to go this way. That's it. And then very carefully, using my snipe nose pliers, I'm going to start and bend them around, and I am attaching it to the other wire that we've just crisscrossed it with. There we go, just press that down. So because the wires cross, one left over right, right over left, one holds the other one down, and then by attaching it to the other wire that's just going to go sort of around the binding, like I'm doing now, that holds that secure. Always with wire jewellery, you're working out which bits to fasten to which bits to make sure that you add more strength and stability to the piece. So I can trim those off now and press the ends down. Down you go, because the last thing you want is a sharp bit, so make sure it's nice and smooth. There we go. Now exactly the same thing again, so down, round, mirror that curve that you've already got, and you've just got one wire now, so down, up over the weaving, sorry my hands went out of shot, cross the wires over each other, snipe nose pliers, gradually ease that round, a little bit of time. Can you see how I just got little tiny nibbles, and it just feeds the wire through. And pull it tight. There we go. Trim off. Press down. Smooth it down. Lovely. And then the same on the other side. I'm going to give it a right good clean, because my wire was a little bit tarnished to start off with, and by then it should look rather gorgeous. So just bringing the wires through and pressing it down. It's a really lovely ring. It looks great no matter what sort of cabochon you use on it. The beads that go around the shank make it very comfortable to wear, and just that little bit different, you know. It's nice to have something different. I popped it back on the ring mandrel to make sure it's going back to the size that we started with, and I can use the strength of the mandrel to just help straighten the stone up and get it to where I want it to be. So there we go. So it needs a clean, so I'm going to go give this a scrub. I often suggest, you know, washing up liquid soap and a toothbrush, give it a scrub, and there, all nice and shiny and all finished. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I am really looking forward to seeing the things that you make. So thanks for watching. Happy wrapping!